Chime in if
You're
you want to.
working.
Did you serve with Dr. Drew?
Not really.
I mean, my husband did, but I know him personally.
Well, feel free if you
No,
want.
no, no.
Okay.
No.
We have to go with these
When's
resolutions.
my funeral?
Good.
Deb-
We'll find out. Cindy, you're on the line?
Okay, so, Deb sent me a picture.
Anybody on the
Talking
line?
Like the day
Kim
before
was.
video.
Kim?
Yeah, Taylor
We were
Baxter.
talking a couple.
Taylor?
Oh, yeah.
Who else? Andrew, you on?
Steve Stewart.
Steve? Okay.
Yep, I'm on.
Okay.
Tony commented that he was going to live stream since he didn't.
Okay.
Okay.
That was for him.
But
Okay.
Cindy, are you on?
She said she was having, she texted me, said that she got disconnected and I heard.
Yeah, so that's why,
Okay. You gotta get going, man.
yeah.
We ready?
Well, Paul, let us know, no, we're not up yet. We have to get the high sign we're
Okay,
connected.
all right.
with
So
live
we
stream.
wait for Paul.
Until we get the thumbs up.
Let me check to see if he You want to do teams or whatever they do for board meetings now? Too important, too confidential?
Joining the conference. Cindy Crowdy.
Okay, Cindy,
Perfect.
good.
Great, hi Cindy.
Hi, Celeste.
Hey Cindy, Gary here. Thanks for joining us.
Again.
Sure, I'm back. Thank you.
Oh, tell,
All right.
One thing we've seen in town, we have one union. And
Wayne?
we've had more appreciation from
Those Yamini and everyone.
Everybody's great. Yeah.
Kids still here?
I took my son back to Colorado,
obvious
so
care.
he's happy as a clam.
okay, Mr. Chairman, I heard that we are,
Okay?
and running?
All right, we're ready to start. Okay, may I have identification from a trustee to motion that we return to public session?
So moved.
Okay. May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
Crowdy, second.
Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
We are now in public session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Cook, would you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I thank everyone who is participating today, both in person and by teleconference. We are continuing to do so in response to the current orders and guidelines from the Ohio Governor and Department of Health, and in accordance with the temporary legislation by the Ohio General Assembly. Ms. Cook, would you elaborate on how that compliance applies to trustees as well as the university, and then verify the quorum majority of voting trustees and establish a record of attendance for all?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ohio amended substitute House Bill 197 established a temporary policy for public bodies, including our Board of Trustees, to utilize electronic communication in lieu of in-person attendance at public meetings pursuant to Executive Order 2020-01D on March 9, 2020, but no later than December 1, 2020, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. For trustees, this means that attendance via teleconference is equivalent to attendance in person and will be counted towards establishing a quorum and voting during this meeting. This temporary legislation also requires notification to the public and media of the date and time of the meeting, as well as information on how the public may gain access to the open portion of the meeting via electronic communication. This is being accomplished for today's special meeting of the Board of Trustees by advance notification and posting of the meeting's date, time, and link on the webpage hosting the live stream of this public session. In addition to the trustees who are personally attending, we have also voting and non-voting trustees in attendance via teleconference. So I'd ask those trustees who are voting and non-voting trustees participating in via telephone, for the record, to please confirm that they are on the telephone line. Ms. Crotty?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Adolph?
Yes.
Mr. Bennington?
Yes.
Thank you. The record will reflect that those three trustees are participating by telephone. And yes, Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. The board has several items of important business for consideration today. However, before we start, I call on Trustee Seraldo to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman Jingo, and thank you to the whole board for allowing me to speak. It's with great sadness that I acknowledge the passing on Monday evening of my friend and colleague, Dr. John Fink. I met John 40 years ago when we were residents together at Akron City Hospital. On behalf of this board, I want to express our deepest sympathy to John's wife and the University of Akron faculty member, Dr. Deborah Owens Fink, as well as their entire family. John served on this board for a full 9 years, from 1997 to 2006, including his chairmanship from 2005 to 2006. His wise leadership benefited the university greatly during this big time of transition. He spent many hours coming here working extra, because I know he always was leaving the hospital, some of his duties there, to oversee some of the building that was going on here. He worked very hard on this board and was very, very committed. He also encouraged my participation. It's probably one of the reasons I'm here on this board as well. Not only did he serve on the board, he was a very well-reputed vascular surgeon in the community, and he also served as chair of the Department of Surgery from 2011 till his death earlier this week. He was a dedicated and loyal physician, a great friend, and a great asset to this university and the community as a whole. He will be greatly missed, and again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Seraldo. The resolutions are in the materials that we have received by the board members in advance of this meeting. The resolutions will be available on the board's website following formal action by the board. As a reminder, since we are meeting as a committee of the whole, votes will be taken individually after each item is presented. President Miller, would you please present the first proposed action?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I wish to present for the board's consideration is a memorandum of understanding between the university and the Physical Facilities Operations Center employees who are members of the Communications Workers of America Union, which is referred to as the CWA unit. Pursuant to this MOU, the CWA unit has agreed to extend its collective bargaining agreement through June 30, 2021, and has agreed to an across-the-board wage reduction of 0.75% for fiscal year 2021. I want to express my deep appreciation to the CW unit on reaching this agreement with the university, and my gratitude for its willingness to share in the sacrifice of its non-bargaining unit co-workers. I'll now ask Mark Stasis from Office of General Counsel to provide you some additional details.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. As President Miller noted, the Communications Workers of America have two separate units on campus. Members who are employees of the Physical Facilities Operations Center, which we call the CWA, and employees who work in other staff positions at the university called the SBU. This agreement is with the CWA unit. The agreement reached with the CWA is already ratified by its membership on Monday and extends the term of the current collective bargaining agreement for 1 year until June 30th, 2021. In addition to extending the agreement, the CWA has agreed to the following terms and conditions: an across-the-board wage reduction of 0.75%, which equals the total savings shared by non-bargaining unit employees, and the right to the university to implement up to 24 furlough days per year per employee. In addition to these temporary concessionary measures, The CWA has agreed to the permanent discontinuation of the retiree spouse and dependent health care coverage effective January 1st, 2021, as well as the elimination of the fair share contribution consistent with Supreme Court language in the Janus decision. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the administration of the University of Akron, I recommend approval of this resolution.
Thank you, President Miller and Mr. Strasses. Before we take the vote on the resolution, are there any comments or questions from the trustees? May I have the identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution passes. Thank you. President Miller, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item of business that I wish to present for the board's consideration is a memorandum of understanding between the university and the remaining staff employees that are members of the Communications Workers of America Union, which is referred to as the SBU unit. Pursuant to this MOU, the SBU unit also has agreed to extend its collective bargaining agreement through June 30, 2021, and has agreed to an across-the-board wage reduction of 1% for fiscal year 2021. I want to express my appreciation to the SBU unit on reaching this agreement with the university and my gratitude for its willingness to share in the sacrifice of its non-bargaining unit co-workers. And again, I'll ask Mark to provide additional details about the MOU.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. As you mentioned, this agreement relates to the SBU, the staff bargaining unit. This agreement reached with the SBU was already ratified by its membership past Monday. It extends the terms of the current collective bargaining agreement for 1 year until June 30th, 2021. In addition to extending the agreement, the SBU has agreed to the following terms and conditions. As President Miller indicated, an across-the-board wage reduction of 1%, which is equal to the total savings shared by non-bargaining unit employees. The right of the university to implement up to 24 furlough days per year per employee. In addition to these temporary measures, the SBU has also agreed to the permanent discontinuation of the retiree spouse and dependent health care coverage, effective January 1st, 2021, and the elimination of the fair share payer contribution consistent with the Janus Supreme Court decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the administration of the University of Akron, I recommend approval of this resolution.
Thank you, President Miller and Mr. Stastis. Before we take the vote on this resolution, are there any comments or questions from the trustees? May I have the identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Cindy. Any opposed? Any abstention? The resolution passes. Thank you. President Miller?
The next item on today's agenda is a tentative agreement between the university and the Fraternal Order of Police Union to extend the term of its collective bargaining agreement with the university through June 30, 2021. Under the terms of the tentative agreement, which still needs to be ratified by the membership, the FOP also has agreed to a temporary wage reduction and a temporary increase in the cost of health care premiums. As with the CWA, I wish to express my appreciation to the FOP on reaching this agreement with the university and my gratitude for its willingness to share the sacrifice of its non-bargaining unit co-workers. Mark, will you please provide additional details about this tentative agreement?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Miller. The agreement relates to the Fraternal Order of Police, which we call the FOP. These are the police officers we have on campus. This agreement, which still needs to be ratified by its membership, is a temporary agreement that extends the terms and conditions of the current collective bargaining agreement until June 30th, 2021. In addition to extending the current agreement, the FOP unit has agreed to the following terms. Wage reductions consistent with the same tiers as non-bargaining unit employees from 3 to 4%, depending on employee salary level. The same tiered increases in health care contributions shared by non-bargaining unit employees. In addition to these temporary measures, the FOP also agrees to elimination of the fair share contribution consistent with the Janus decision. I would also like to extend special thanks to our negotiation team, which includes Sarah Kelly and others in HR, as well as to the CWA and FOP negotiation teams for agreeing to share in the sacrifice during this challenging time. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, President Miller and Mr. Stassis. Before we take the vote on the resolution, are there any comments or questions from trustees? May I have the identification from a trustee to motion the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. Thank you. President Miller, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item of business that I wish to present is a tentative agreement with the Akron chapter of the American Association of University Professors to extend the term of its collective bargaining agreement with the university through December 31st, 2021. This tentative agreement is subject to ratification by the AAUP membership by no later than August 3rd, 2020. Under the tentative agreement, the AAUP has agreed to both a temporary wage reduction and a temporary increase in health care premiums for its membership during fiscal year 2021. The tentative agreement also includes a furlough policy. I want to express my deep appreciation for the work of the negotiating teams on reaching the tentative agreement, which involved very difficult conversations under incredibly challenging circumstances. I also wish to express my appreciation of and gratitude to the AAUP and its members for their sacrifices at this time. And I'll now ask Mark one last time to provide additional details about this tentative.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. As Dr. Miller mentioned, the tentative agreement we reached with the AUP extends the terms of the collective bargaining agreement for 1 year through December 31st, 2021. In addition to extending the term, the tentative agreement includes the following terms and conditions. A temporary wage reduction during the fiscal year 2021, which is consistent with the wage reduction shared by non-bargaining unit employees. A temporary increase to health care insurance premiums during the fiscal year 2021, again consistent with the increases shared by non-bargaining unit members. The right of the university to implement furlough days should certain circumstances occur. In addition to these changes, we agreed to update the collective bargaining agreement to reflect previous operational changes agreed to by the parties and the elimination of the fair share contribution pursuant to the Janus Supreme Court decision. I would like to share in Dr. Miller's thanks to the AUP negotiation team for their efforts in reaching a tentative agreement. Would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, President Miller and Mr. Stastis. Before we take the vote on this resolution, are there any comments or questions from trustees? May I have the identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
Body second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution is passed. Thank you. Please continue, Dr. Miller.
So, Mr. Chairman, next we are asking you to approve a number of personnel actions. Sarah Kelly will provide us highlights of those personnel actions.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Very briefly, since the last board meeting in June, Human Resources has received approximately 90 requests to either retire or resign. These voluntary separations include several employees who have agreed to retire or resign on or before December 31st, 2020. And in exchange, they were held harmless from any reduction in workforce. As a result of these submissions, the university was able to reduce the potential number of involuntary reductions in force.
Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the administration of the University of Akron, I recommend approval of these personnel.
Thank you, President Miller and Mrs. Kelly. Before we take the vote on this resolution, are there any comments or questions from trustees? May I have the identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This resolution is passed. Thank you, President Miller. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we have examined ways to reduce the university's budget, we have done so with the paramount goal of preserving as many employee positions as possible throughout this process and ensuring the quality of the student experience. In an effort to meet that goal, we've undertaken many steps to realize savings short of a reduction in force. Some employees have chosen to resign or retire. Our employee unions have agreed to modify existing collective bargaining agreements, including accepting temporary pay reductions. Non-bargaining unit employees also have been asked to sacrifice financially through temporary salary reductions and through permanent increases in health care premiums. I am grateful for these collective sacrifices made by our hardworking employees. However, as I've shared with this board and the university community in the past, personnel costs make up approximately 60% of the university's total budget, and many of the remaining budget items are fixed costs that cannot be substantially reduced. Unfortunately, the considerable sacrifices already made by our employees are insufficient to design a budget that will sustain the University of Akron under the conditions that we now face. Because of its own financial difficulties as a result of the pandemic, the state has already reduced higher education funding for the upcoming year and is projected to do so again for fiscal year 2021-22. Moreover, the recent resurgence of COVID-19 cases in Ohio has created further uncertainty as to the challenges that the university will face in the upcoming academic year. We continue to experience declining enrollment, greatly worsened by the pandemic and the resulting loss of revenue. Although our financial reserves can provide some very limited partial relief in this situation, reserves alone are insufficient to resolve the crisis that we face, and we must protect as much as possible these reserves in order to preserve the university's future. Therefore, in order to better align the university's workforce with its current financial situation, I must recommend to the board the following two resolutions to eliminate 178 positions at the university. I will now ask Sarah Kelly, Associate Vice President for Human Resources and Chief Human Resource Officer, to provide details of these resolutions.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. The resolutions before you today will abolish 178 positions, which includes 96 bargaining unit faculty positions and 82 non-bargaining unit faculty, staff, and contract professional positions. The effective date of this resolution is today, July 15th, but the separation dates for affected employees are to be determined by the statute, university rule, or applicable collective bargaining agreement. No employee will separate sooner than 2 weeks from today. All employees whose positions are abolished will receive educational benefits for themselves and their families, substantially similar to those provided to employees and as modified from time to time by the university. No-cost services through Ohio Means Jobs, which include job search assistance, resume writing workshops, and interviewing workshops. In addition, the Employee Assistance Program through Impact Solutions will remain available to impacted employees and their families free of charge for 90 days post-separation. The projected annual savings from the position abolishments is approximately $16.4 million.
Thank you, Sarah. I know this is not welcome news, and we are all saddened by the prospect of losing valuable
Joining the
colleagues.
conference.
Regrettably, however, in order to sustain the University of Akron and to preserve as much as possible of its dwindling reserves, I recommend on behalf of the administration that the board adopt these two resolutions.
Thank you, President Miller and Ms. Kelly. Before we take the vote on these resolutions, on behalf of myself and this board, I wish to offer my appreciation to all of our employees who have sacrificed in an effort to preserve as many positions as possible at the university. Your dedication to this institution and to our colleagues is commendable. When I joined the board in 2016, I was well aware that the university faced significant financial challenges, but we have continued to work extremely hard over the years to address our issues. We realized that we had to immediately take significant cost-saving steps to rise to the challenge before us. Given our financial challenges brought on by the pandemic, coupled with our overall enrollment decline and our debt burden, it is critical that we be proactive and use every opportunity available to us to create sustainable financial stability for the university. Unfortunately, as President Miller has said, the institution's financial challenges are too steep to overcome with just this sacrifice, and the university, regrettably, must reduce its workforce in order to sustain its future. Are there any comments or questions from other trustees? We will first vote on the resolution to abolish positions other than bargaining unit facility. May I have identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second the motion?
Second.
I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution is passed. Thank you. Our final action today will be to vote on a resolution to abolish bargaining unit faculty positions. May I have the identification from a trustee to motion that the board approve this item?
So moved.
May I have the identification from a trustee to second that motion? I will now conduct the vote. Will all trustees in favor respond by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. Thank you. Are there any announcements by trustees or any other business for the good of the order? The next regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, August 12th, 2020. Committee meetings will begin at 7:30 or 8 o'clock
Leaving the
a.m.
conference.
The board meeting is scheduled to begin at 10:30 or 11 a.m. Our business today is concluded. We are adjourned.
Leaving the conference.
Taylor Bennington.
Leaving the conference.